I'm Mike and welcome to the workshop. And this week I'm going to show you how to make a simple, cheap cabinet to store your chisels and make sure that the old dangerous rust doesn't get at them. So let's roll the intro. So, long time and returning viewers may recall that I made a video about making a easy access chisel rack a while ago, here somewhere, and I decided to move away from that because although I'm in the workshop a lot, this is a very damp workshop, and what happened was I didn't do any work for a couple of weeks, and because it was damp, the timber soaked in moisture and I ended up getting surface rust. I don't want that. I spent so long making these perfect that we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a very simple fold out toolbox that will go on the wall, that's closed, but far more importantly the chisels are just going to hang there, which means that there's nowhere for the moisture to gain up. The moisture is able to escape and hopefully we won't get any rust. So I'll be going over here, and it's part of my cleaning up the workshop series here, where I'm going to use entirely scraps of plywood that I have from previous projects to make this up, but you of course can buy fresh plywood. So let's get down to the bench. So this design, if you can even call it that, is very simple. We're just making a very thin wall unit to hang our chisels and associated tools on. So this is going to have two doors which are half the depth. You can see here on the inside of the doors we're going to have chisel storage on both sides, and then on the back we're going to have my most commonly used chisels. These are going to be very simply hung using some dowels, so they're easily accessible, and like I said, with the doors closed we'll put a little bit of edging on it, make sure it seals up nicely so we don't get any damp in there when we're not in here for a while, and our chisel shouldn't rust. So let's go to the table saw and start cutting up some of these scraps to make this project.
Now, doing a project like this is a great opportunity to use up material that otherwise wouldn't be of any use. In this case, this is construction grade plywood. It has wafer thin veneer, so it's not really good for any kind of fine furniture making, and these sizes don't really apply to what you would normally be doing with it. So it saves me cutting these up for burning, although a lot of the scraps probably will be. And again, as I'm going through this, I'm not really paying attention to grain or grain direction because it doesn't really matter with plywood. I'm just trying to get all the pieces I need out of this to make my cabinet. And he gives you the opportunity to use stuff like this here, which is what was left when I cut out some curves and pieces for a set, because you know I'm never going to use it for anything again, so it might as well be on the wall in something that I'm using as behind a table or something. And like all projects like this, there's multiples of everything, so I'm setting myself up a small little production line here, cutting all the pieces I need before I start making. And as I've said several times before, the best way to get accuracy is to mark one off the other. So cut your first one, mark the rest off them. You're much less likely to get a lot of drift. So I just cut all up these pieces, so I have 8 of the sides and 4 of the tops and that kind of thing. And I just keep going and keep marking and make sure I have all my pieces before I start assembly. And here I'm just dry fitting to make sure that everything is right, because it's a lot less messy than when I have the glue applied.
So that's all the parts out, more or less, and it took 30 minutes. So we're flying. Assembly is going to go just as quick. Just glue and nails. I'm using a brad nailer, you can use panel pins. So we're going to lay all our stuff out here, nail it up, and then we'll start working out where we're going to hang out our tubes. I've obviously already worked that out, but we'll start laying it out. Sorry to defeat purpose if I didn't check before that it all fit into this. Anyway, there we go. And that's a good tip if you're doing something like this where you're nailing on sides. Glue up one end, then put the other one under it to give you a flat base. It'll help you nail everything up nice and sweet, and it makes it an awful lot less awkward. Same applies if you're screwing something together. I'm sure I've showed that before, but there you go.
The process for making the doors is identical, only the doors have 3 sides, not 4 sides. As it happens, I actually made these doors so one is slightly bigger than the other. This is just what worked best with my layout. Yours may vary depending on what chisels you have.
Time has passed, tools are laid out. So, how's this all going to work? I have made an example. And it is as simple as that. So, what we have here is just very simple. Either side of each chisel, as it widens, we're going to have a couple of dowels. On the ones on the door, I'll probably put in a little scoop with my Dremel tool just to make sure they don't fall off. That's all it is. I'm going to lay them out as I want them. Drill my holes as I go along. Just glue them in. Those little dowels will hold those perfectly. So I'm working with a length dowel. I want to make it fancy-ish. And luckily I have this cheap electric pencil sharpener that has a size for kids' big pencils. And it just happens to fit the dowel perfectly. So I'm just going to stick in each dowel. Give them a little taper just to make them look nicer. You'll see I have a little production line set up. I'll taper the end of my dowel, shove it in, nip it off with the saw, then with a sanding pad take the edge off to make it easier to go into the hole, and do that about 100 times and I have all my dowels done out.
Now, we all make mistakes. And the way I started to do this was a mistake by drilling them individually and then hammering in the dowels. It just meant that everything moved around too much. So I did the first couple like this, as you can see, very carefully holding the chisel in place and drilling just about away from the handle to where it tapers, to make sure that I'm able to just drop it into place, but it kind of pressure fits itself under its own weight. And then kind of after that, very quickly I realised that what I should do, which is what I should have done from the start, was mark for each dowel, then take out all the chisels, and do all the dowels at the one time. And what I'm doing here is, because these aren't very deep into this 9mm back, I'm just giving them a little tap to make sure they're all level and the chisels aren't kind of off to one side or the other, because that could mean they would fall out, and we definitely don't want that. And here on the left hand door, which will house all my Japanese chisels, you can see me doing it right the first time, putting in all the dowels first. One little thing I did add after this was a very small dowel. It was actually a cocktail stick, just to stop my smallest Japanese chisel from tipping over when the door is opened. Things like that develop as you go through making something like this, and they evolve. It's one of the reasons I like to make stuff for the workshop and generally don't glue it together, so you can make it once and improve it and improve it and improve it. Plus, it's kind of fun. And here, as I talked about earlier, on the other door, I'm putting in little grooves. I'm actually doing it with my scalpel. This is just to hold in the rounder chisel. You see there, the longer chisel doesn't really have a taper, so that'll just help hold that in place and have it not fall out, which I definitely don't want. I also decided that this was the door I'm going to house my scalpel in, so all I've done is cut a groove in a piece of plywood the same thickness as the side there, that's wide enough for the scalpel to drop in, and I just affix that with a little bit of super glue. Right, so we have our divisions done before we put on our hinges and all. Let's make this look a little bit nicer. I know it's made out of plywood, but hell, normally when I make things that are only meant to be prototypes or temporary to last forever, so let's give this a go. So very simply here, all I'm going to do is apply some solid edging to the exposed edges of the ply. The inside we'll give a nice clear coat to. The outside then we're going to apply a little bit of stain just to make it look a little bit fancier. So I have videos and all on how to apply edging, so this will be on those quick little clips, and I'll see you when it's all done. And that'll be a nice bit cleaner with all those edges covered. So like I said, just to add a bit of interest to this, I'm going to dye the outside faces and spray the inside clear, give the top coat of clear as well. This is not going to be the most beautiful looking thing, it's for a workshop. I picked the pieces for their size, not for their beauty, but we'll do all that. Once we have it stained, then
we'll apply a base coat of our lacquer all around, get it nice and good, and then we will attach our hinges and our lock, and we'll always say to put this on the wall. Right, so our finished dry, let's on hinge. So for this I'm just going to be using some piano hinge. I have a few bits of length left over. This is very handy, it comes in quite long lengths. It used to be used for the lids of pianos. And you just cut it to whatever length you need. This is mild steel, so it'll cut with a little hacksaw. I'm going to use my circular stuff. I'm going to use my angle grinder, and I'll give you a little tip as well, which I find is helpful for you. You always want to just after you cut it, even if you cut it just with a normal hacksaw or something, just take off those burrs because they will catch you. Just a few, like I said, it's only mild steel, so a few white file just takes all the sharpness off it. So you'll notice this is pre-bored for holes. Now you can drill more holes if it doesn't suit. I just picked the spot that this would work on. But the countersinks are quite shallow, and even a 3mm screw tends not to get fully down into it. What I generally do is I get a scrap piece of timber, and either I happen to have a metal countersink, but a small drill bit will do as well. And I just, on a piece of timber, I just give it a little shot just to widen out that countersink a bit. The timber stops you going the whole way through because this is only about 1mm thick. Just a little bit on each, just to help the head sink in a bit better. You see how thin it is? It's actually pushed out the back a little bit here. So I'll just go along with the hammer. Just do a little tap to flatten it back out again. Now another trick I find quite handy for doing things like this is to tape your lid on. I've also put in a little spacer here, actually an offcut of the piano hinge, so everything lines up, so I can stand it up on its end and easily have control over putting in the hinge, keep everything in position. Oh, there's no magic here, just line your hinge up with the gap. I'm using a bradawl, create a little hole for yourself. I had to go one either side. And then input all your little screws. rinse and repeat until we're done. Now, like a Christmas present, we'll wrap it and see the moment of truth. Yeah, that's good. I had to leave a little gap so the doors will avoid each other. We can put a little cover slip on that. They open almost fully, which is as much as you can expect. It goes up pretty tight. Everything's nice and square. I think we're almost ready to put this on the wall. Well, no, first we want to make sure it stays closed. Okay. Now I have this simple little box clamp here that I'm going to put on this. Also act as a mini handle. So just going to put it on temporarily with these screws. Screws are going to be too long. We'll go through because it's only a 9mm facing. But I want to replace them with a few bolts because this is only 9mm, no matter what screw I put it in. It's going to tear out. And if I'm opening it and using this loop to open the door, I don't want it to pull out, I want it to be a bit more secure. So we'll just line that up, put these in. Now for the lock, I've slightly changed my mind. I didn't like the idea of putting bolts in here. I know it's not the most beautiful thing, but everything inside is wood. I want to keep it that way. So I've made up these little plates that'll go on the inside of the door. Drop super glue. Put the screws back in. The screws will go into the back of the plates. Nice, safe. No problems. Now to put on the wall.
Now, I took care when I was drilling for these screw holes that they'd be as masked as possible by either a handle or a blade of a chisel. And I'm propping this up on a strip of 12mm ply to give me clearance from my shelf here. We don't want it to bind.
Right, so there we are. Couple hours work and some scrap. We have ourselves a really nice chisel press. These will keep them easily accessible, and I won't run into the problem I had before with my block absorbing moisture and rusting my blades. So if you like this type of project, make sure you like, share, subscribe and all that fun stuff. I do have quite a lot of scrap that I've taken out of the workshop. You will see me doing it in a previous video when I made the assembly table that I used here. So I do have a couple of scrap plywood projects coming up to make use of all that scrap. So keep an eye out for those. So, nothing left to say but what I always say. Absolutely do try this at home. We got ourselves some gremlins in the system. Right, well, that's enough of that bollocks.